Hello guys, today we will be talking about a topic every NFL team history and legacy, explained in 40 minutes now. Let's get started.
Content kickoff. In September 1920, representatives from 14 clubs gather inside a car dealership in Canton, Ohio, to form the American Professional Football Association. Teams range from factory-backed sides like the Decatur Staleys to traveling outfits like the Rock Island Independents. The league's first title goes to the Akron Pros, who finished the season undefeated at 8-3. By 1922, the APFA rebrands as the National Football League in an effort to distance itself from its loosely organized barnstorming origins. Despite the formal structure, instability remains the norm. Teams fold, relocate, or disappear entirely. Of the 14 founding members, only two, Chicago then Decatur, and the Chicago Cardinals, ultimately survived the league's first decade. One team reportedly forgets to show up for its own game. The league legalizes the forward pass in 1906, but by the early 1920s, most teams still run exclusively from tightly packed formations. Scoring remains low and style of play largely indistinguishable from rugby, which makes it difficult to attract consistent fan interest. The fragile infrastructure sets the stage for aggressive consolidation and rule experimentation throughout the 1930s. Packers. Founded in 1919 and officially joining the NFL in 1921, the Green Bay Packers remain the league's only publicly owned team. Over the next century, they compile a record unmatched in championships, winning 13 titles, the most in NFL history. Head coach Vince Lombardi secures 5 of them in the 1960s, including the first 2 Super Bowls in 1967 and 1968. His run defines Green Bay as the NFL's gold standard in an era when the league is still expanding its national footprint. The franchise builds further stability around quarterback play. From 1992 to 2022, Green Bay is led by just 2 starters, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, who combined for 3 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and 1 win each. Meanwhile, Lambeau Field, opened in 1957, becomes both an enduring venue and a symbol of small market longevity. The Packers' title total and quarterback consistency place them in rare company as the league enters the Super Bowl era. Bears. Formed in 1920 as the Decatur Staleys, the franchise moves to Chicago a year later and becomes the Bears under player-coach-owner George Halas. Halas guides the team to 8 NFL titles, including dominant stretches in the 1930s and 1940s, and helps write the rulebook as a founding figure of the league. Chicago holds the NFL's all-time wins record for nearly a century, reaching 786 victories before being passed by Green Bay in 2022. The 1985 Bears field one of the most suffocating defenses in history, allowing just 15.9 points per game while recording 64 sacks and 54 takeaways. Behind coordinator Buddy Ryan's 46 defense, Chicago finishes 15-1 and cruises to a 46-10 Super Bowl win over New England. Despite 9 total championships, the Bears earn just 1 Super Bowl title, but remain a legacy franchise with more than 30 Hall of Fame inductees. The Super Bowl shuffle fades, but the Halas imprint endures as the modern NFC takes shape. Cowboys. Dallas joins the NFL in 1960 as an expansion franchise and quickly establishes itself under head coach Tom Landry. Over a 29-year tenure, Landry records 250 wins, appearing in 5 Super Bowls and winning 2. The Cowboys earn a reputation for consistency, reaching the postseason in 18 of 20 seasons between 1966 and 1985. In 1978, a team highlight reel dubs them America's Team, a label that sticks as national broadcasts and merchandising soar. In the 1990s, under Jimmy Johnson and later Barry Switzer, Dallas builds a dynasty behind Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. The Cowboys win 3 Super Bowls in a 4-year span from 1992 to 1995, cementing their legacy as a flagship franchise. By the 2000s, they record a league-high 36 playoff appearances, blending legacy branding with enduring on-field relevance. The glitz of AT&T Stadium awaits as new quarterbacks chase their place in a loaded trophy case. Steelers. Pittsburgh enters the league in 1933 as one of its longest-suffering franchises, failing to win a single playoff game for 4 decades. That changes in 1974 when the Steelers capture their first NFL title and kick off one of the most dominant runs in league history. Between 1974 and 1979, they win 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons, powered by a core that includes defensive tackle Mean Joe Green quarterback Terry Bradshaw and receiver Lynn Swann. Their defense, the Steel Curtain, sets the standard for physicality and pressure-era football. Stability defines the post-dynasty years. Since 1969, the franchise has had only 3 head coaches, with Mike Tomlin taking over in 2007 and recording 17 straight non-losing seasons through 2023. The Steelers tie the Patriots for most Super Bowl wins in NFL history at 6 and remain a model of sustained competitiveness. Their success through eras of realignment and parity sets the stage for their closest AFC North rivals. 49ers. The 49ers rise in the 1980s behind Bill Walsh, who formalizes the West Coast offense, short rhythmic passes that replace traditional running plays, and stretch defenses horizontally. His scheme transforms quarterback Joe Montana into a surgical passer, guiding San Francisco to 4 Super Bowl titles between 1981 and 1989. Montana throws 122 passes across those 4 games without a single interception, redefining postseason efficiency. His top weapon is Jerry Rice, whose 895 career receiving yards and 208 touchdowns remain untouched more than 2 decades after his final snap. The post-Walsh era produces another title in 1994 under George Seifert and quarterback Steve Young, but consistency wavers in the 2000s. Jim Harbaugh restores relevance with a top-ranked defense and back-to-back NFC championship appearances in 2012 and 2013. Despite a new venue, Levi's Stadium, opened in 2014, the franchise struggles to recapture its historic magic. That uneven stretch sets up a familiar pattern of rebuilds and resets as the NFC West grows more competitive. Raiders. The Raiders become synonymous with owner Al Davis, who coins the phrase, "just win baby," and builds a team in his image, fast, physical, and unrelenting. After years in the AFL, they joined the NFL in the 1970 merger and peak in 1976, with a 13-1 record demolishing the Vikings in Super Bowl XL. Under Davis, the franchise wins 3 titles across 3 different decades, 1976, 1980, and 1983, anchored by aggressive defense and vertical passing. The 1983 squad, led by quarterback Jim Plunkett and defensive end Howie Long, becomes the first Los Angeles-based team to win a Super Bowl. Instability defines the next era. The team relocates 5 times between Oakland, Los Angeles, and finally Las Vegas in 2020. Star power remains part of the brand. Bo Jackson rushes for 221 yards in a single game in 1987 before a hip injury ends his career prematurely. Even amid constant upheaval, the Raiders maintain cultural relevance through iconic uniforms, loyal fans, and a renegade identity. The Vegas move resets expectations as the franchise enters a new market and a new chapter. Patriots. In 2000, the Patriots select Michigan quarterback Tom Brady with the 199th pick, triggering a 20-year run that rewrites NFL standards for sustained dominance. Paired with head coach Bill Belichick, Brady leads New England to 6 Super Bowl wins between 2001 and 2018, including a comeback from a 28-3 deficit in Super Bowl LI. Their 2007 squad sets a modern scoring record and becomes the first team to go 16-0 in the regular season. But a 17-14 Super Bowl loss to the Giants ends the perfect bid. Over that span, the team posts 17 division titles in 19 years and becomes the league's winningest franchise of the 21st century. Controversy shadows the dynasty. The 2007 Spygate scandal results in fines and lost draft picks after New England is caught taping opponents' signals. In 2015, the NFL suspends Brady for 4 games during the Deflategate investigation, further fueling scrutiny. Despite these setbacks, the team consistently wins with rotating personnel and a defense-first identity. After Brady's departure in 2020, the Patriots enter a rebuilding phase under Belichick, now the league's 3rd winningest coach all time. The post-dynasty transition sets the conditions for a new era in Foxborough. Dolphins. In 1972, the Dolphins complete the only perfect season in NFL history, 17 wins, 0 losses, culminating in a 14-7 victory over Washington in Super Bowl VII. Head coach Don Shula, who begins leading Miami in 1970, orchestrates the feat with a run-first offense and dominant defense, then repeats as champion in 1973. Shula remains with the franchise for 26 seasons, retiring in 1995 as the NFL's all-time win leader with 347 victories. The 1970s established the Dolphins as an elite AFC power, drawing national recognition to a relatively young expansion team. Quarterback Dan Marino takes over in 1983 and immediately transforms Miami's identity. In 1984, he throws for 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns, both league records at the time, while leading the Dolphins to the Super Bowl, where they fall to San Francisco. Marino goes on to pass for 361 career yards, but retires in 1999 without a championship, leaving a lingering gap between statistical greatness and postseason results. Since then, Miami cycles through over 20 starting quarterbacks in search of a true successor. The prolonged drought under center defines the franchise's post-Marino era and narrows its competitive ceiling. Chiefs, originally founded as the Dallas Texans in the upstart AFL, the franchise relocates to Kansas City in 1963 and rebrands as the Chiefs. Under head coach Hank Stram and quarterback Len Dawson, they win Super Bowl IV in January 1970, dominating Minnesota 23-7. That win marks the AFL's final championship before its full merger with the NFL later that year, making Kansas City one of only 2 AFL teams to claim a Super Bowl before integration. The Chiefs remain playoff contenders through the 1990s, but failed to return to the title game for half a century. In 2018, Patrick Mahomes throws for 5,097 yards and 50 touchdowns in his first season, as starter, earning league MVP honors and redefining the franchise's offensive ceiling. He wins 2 more MVPs in 2022 and 2023, while leading the team to 3 Super Bowl titles in 5 seasons, matching Tom Brady's pace through age 28. Head coach Andy Reid becomes the franchise's all-time win leader as the Chiefs turn into a postseason fixture. Meanwhile, Arrowhead Stadium's 142.2 decibel noise level sets the Guinness World Record for loudest crowd roar at a sporting event. The Chiefs' rise resets the AFC power structure and builds the league's first true dynasty of the 2020s. Giants. Founded in 1925, the New York Giants accumulate 8 total championships, 4 NFL titles before the Super Bowl era, and 4 Super Bowl victories after 1986. Their identity forms early around elite defense, with Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor reshaping the position by recording 132.5 sacks and forcing rule changes to protect quarterbacks. Taylor wins NFL MVP in 1986, the same year the Giants go 14-2 and shut down Denver in Super Bowl XXI. Head coach Bill Parcells builds a system that leans on physicality and field position, establishing a blueprint the franchise returns to across eras. In 2007, the Giants enter the playoffs as a 10-6 wildcard and go on to pull off the league's most famous upset, defeating the 18-0 Patriots in Super Bowl XXI. Quarterback Eli Manning throws 2 go-ahead touchdowns and wins the first of his 2 Super Bowl MVPs. He repeats the feat 4 years later, again defeating New England, and retires with 57 C3 passing yards and 366 touchdowns. The Giants' defensive-first legacy persists across decades, anchoring their postseason runs even when regular season success varies. The franchise's blue-collar model contrasts sharply with their crosstown rivals, setting up the conditions for the next legacy of the New York Jets. Eagles. Founded in 1933 during the Great Depression, the Philadelphia Eagles wait 15 years before claiming their first NFL title in 1948, then repeat in 1949 and 1960. That 1960 championship marks the only playoff defeat in Vince Lombardi's postseason career, as the Eagles intercept future Hall of Famer Bart Starr twice and win 17-13. Through the 20th century, Philadelphia builds a reputation for physical defense and volatile quarterback play, cycling through eras led by Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb, and Michael Vick. Fan expectations remain high. Regardless of record veteran stadiums, Court in the Basement becomes symbolic of the city's passionate extremes. The franchise's breakthrough comes in the 2017 season when backup quarterback Nick Foles replaces an injured Carson Wentz and leads the team to a title. Foles throws for 373 yards and 3 touchdowns in Super Bowl LIEX, including a touchdown catch on the now famous Philly special. The Eagles beat the Patriots 41-33 and secure their first Super Bowl despite entering as underdogs. The win solidifies the city's status as one of the league's most demanding markets, where fan loyalty runs deep, but tolerance for failure runs thin. That Super Bowl win resets expectations and frames the pressure cooker now felt by divisional rival Dallas. Broncos. The Denver Broncos joined the NFL as part of the 1970 AFL-NFL merger and quickly built a playoff-caliber roster, but their early Super Bowl results proved brutal. Between 1977 and 1989, Denver loses 4 Super Bowls by a combined 96 points, including back-to-back defeats by Washington and San Francisco, where they surrender 42 and 55 points respectively. John Elway, a 9-time Pro Bowler and franchise quarterback, reverses that narrative late in his career. In 1997 and 1998, Elway leads the Broncos to consecutive Super Bowl wins, retiring immediately after securing his second ring. Denver returns to the spotlight in the 2010s by signing Peyton Manning, who throws a then-record 55 touchdown passes in 2013 at age 37. 2 years later, despite Manning's declining arm strength, the Broncos ride a top-ranked defense to victory in Super Bowl 50, where linebacker Von Miller earns MVP with 2.5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. The team's altitude-based home field, now known as Empower Field at Mile High, regularly affects both stamina and special teams kickoffs, often travel farther while visiting defenses wear down faster. Denver's post-Manning rebuild, however, marks a return to quarterback instability and sets up a divisional contrast with Kansas City's Mahomes-era dominance. Colts. The Colts relocate from Baltimore to Indianapolis in 1984 after nearly 3 decades as one of the league's flagship franchises. Johnny Unitas, the team's Hall of Fame quarterback through the 1950s and 60s, throws touchdown passes in 47 straight games, a record that stands for over half a century. His dominance helps define the modern passing game and earns Baltimore 3 NFL championships before the 1970 AFL-NFL merger. But when the team's competitiveness declines and attendance slips, ownership authorizes the controversial overnight move to Indianapolis. The franchise rebounds behind Peyton Manning, the first overall pick in 1998, who produces 141 regular season wins, 4 MVP awards, and 8 division titles during his 13-year run. In 2006, head coach Tony Dungy leads the Colts to their first Super Bowl win in 36 years, defeating the Bears in rainy Miami conditions. But sustained postseason success proves elusive, and after Manning's 2011 neck surgery, the team drafts Andrew Luck first overall. Luck reaches 4 Pro Bowls and wins Comeback Player of the Year in 2018, but retires at age 29, citing repeated injuries. The search for long-term quarterback stability resumes just as division rivals like Tennessee and Jacksonville retool their rosters. Saints. Founded in 1967, the New Orleans Saints begin play as an expansion franchise and finish their inaugural season winless at 0-11 before recording their first victory in Week 15. Over their first 2 decades, they failed to register a single winning season, prompting frequent coaching changes and instability under center. That changes with the arrival of Drew Brees in 2006, who joins head coach Sean Payton, shortly after Hurricane Katrina devastates the city and displaces the team. Brees goes on to throw for an all-time record 358 passing yards and 571 touchdowns, leading the league in yards 7 times. In 2009, Brees and Payton guide the Saints to a 13-3 record and a dominant playoff run, culminating in a 31-17 Super Bowl XLIV win over Peyton Manning's Colts. The victory marks the franchise's first championship and becomes a symbolic rallying point for a city in recovery. But controversy follows in 2012 when the NFL suspends Peyton the GM and several players for an alleged bounty program that rewarded injuring opponents, a scandal that temporarily stalls momentum. Despite that setback, the Superdome remains one of the league's toughest venues, known for extreme crowd noise and consistent home field advantage. The post-Breeze era begins with quarterback turnover and declining win totals as New Orleans searches for long-term leadership. Jets. In 1969, the New York Jets become the first AFL team to defeat an NFL opponent in the Super Bowl, upsetting the heavily favored Colts 16-7 in Super Bowl III. Quarterback Joe Namath, who throws for over 4,000 yards in 1967, famously guarantees the win days before kickoff, then delivers behind a dominant defense and efficient run game. The victory legitimizes the AFL in the eyes of fans and owners, accelerating the full merger into a single NFL. But for the Jets, that moment stands alone. The team has not returned to the Super Bowl in over 5 decades. Since the 1970s, New York cycles through quarterbacks, coaches, and identities without establishing consistent success. The butt fumble in 2012, where quarterback Mark Sanchez collides with a teammate's backside and loses the ball, becomes a national punchline and symbol of the franchise's dysfunction. From 2009 to 2021, the Jets draft quarterbacks in the top 3 picks 4 times: Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, and most recently a trade for Aaron Rodgers, yet struggle to build around any of them. Fan frustration grows as the team rotates through offensive schemes and rebuilds without a stable foundation. The Jets remain defined by one historic high and a prolonged search for relevance. Bills. Between 1990 and 1993, the Buffalo Bills reach 4 consecutive Super Bowls, the only team in NFL history to do so, and lose all 4. Led by quarterback Jim Kelly and running back Thurman Thomas, the Bills run the high-tempo K-gun offense, which averages over 26 points per game across that stretch. Their consistency in winning AFC titles contrasts with narrow defeats on the league's biggest stage, including a 1-point loss in Super Bowl X05 when Scott Norwood's 47-yard field goal misses wide right. Despite the historic futility, the early 90s Bills define an era of AFC dominance and offensive innovation. Buffalo endures a 17-year playoff drought after 1999, but regains relevance with the emergence of quarterback Josh Allen. Drafted in 2018, Allen accounts for 177 total touchdowns in his first 5 seasons while averaging 34.6 points per game in the 2021 playoffs. In the 2022 divisional round, Buffalo allows the Chiefs to tie the game with a field goal after giving up 44 yards in 13 seconds, ultimately losing in overtime without touching the ball again. The moment fuels debate over overtime rules and reaffirms Buffalo's near-miss legacy. The team's loyal fan base, known as Bills Mafia, continues to rally around a franchise still chasing its first championship. Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings reach 4 Super Bowls between 1969 and 1976, and lose all 4, becoming the first team in NFL history to go 0-4 in the title game. Anchored by the Purple People Eaters' defensive front, Alan Page, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, and Gary Larson, the 1970s Vikings, lead the NFC in points allowed 4 times in 7 years. Despite dominance in the regular season and multiple NFC titles, they failed to score more than 14 points in any of their Super Bowl appearances. Their inability to convert defensive strength into championships cements a long-standing reputation for postseason frustration. The team reshapes its identity in 1998, drafting wide receiver Randy Moss, who catches 17 touchdowns as a rookie while helping Minnesota post a 15-1 record. That season ends with a missed 38-yard field goal by Gary Anderson, the only miss of his season, and an overtime loss in the NFC Championship. The pattern recurs in 2009 and again in 2017 when the Minneapolis Miracle's 61-yard touchdown to Stephon Diggs stuns New Orleans but leads only to a blowout loss the next week. The franchise still seeks its first Super Bowl win after more than 6 decades of near misses and dramatic exits. Falcons. The Falcons post a franchise-best 14-2 record in 1998 behind quarterback Chris Chandler, And running back Jamal Anderson then advanced to Super Bowl XY3 after defeating a 15-1 Vikings team in the NFC Championship. They lose the title game to Denver 34-19, starting a pattern of high-ceiling seasons, ending in high-profile disappointment. In 2016, Atlanta holds a 28-3 lead over New England, midway through the third quarter of Super Bowl LI before allowing 31 unanswered points, marking the largest collapse in Super Bowl history. Despite Matt Ryan's MVP season and Kyle Shanahan's top-ranked offense, the loss reshapes perceptions of the franchise's ability to close. Earlier from 2001 to 2006, Michael Vick redefines the quarterback position by rushing for a sixth 109 yards, while averaging 7.0 yards per carry, both records for his position. But his 2007 federal dogfighting conviction and prison sentence halt his Falcons career. In 2015, wide receiver Julio Jones records 136 catches and 871 receiving yards, second most in NFL history at the time, as Atlanta attempts to rebuild a competitive core around Ryan. The team opens Mercedes-Benz Stadium in 2017, a $1.6 billion facility, with a retractable roof and a Chick-fil-A that remains closed on game day Sundays. The stadium era begins with promise but continues the team's ongoing search for lasting postseason success. Panthers. Founded in 1995, the Panthers become just the second modern expansion team to reach the Super Bowl within their first decade, going 11-5 in 2003 and winning 2 playoff games before falling to New England in Super Bowl XXVIII. That early success sets expectations, but inconsistency soon defines the franchise. Carolina builds a reputation for elite defenses led at times by Julius Peppers, Luke Kuechly, and Thomas Davis while cycling through offensive coordinators and quarterbacks. In 2015, Cam Newton wins MVP with 45 total touchdowns and leads the team to a 15-1 record, outscoring opponents by over 12 points per game during the regular season. That season ends with a 24-10 loss to Denver in Super Bowl 50, where Carolina's offense records just 1 touchdown and turns the ball over 4 times. Newton never returns to MVP form, and after injuries and a declining roster, he exits in 2020. Meanwhile, billionaire David Tepper purchases the team in 2018 and begins an aggressive rebuild, but his tenure produces 5 head coaches in 6 seasons and no playoff wins. The franchise remains in search of offensive stability and a long-term quarterback to match its historical defensive pedigree. Seahawks. Founded in 1976, the Seahawks begin play as an AFC expansion team before realigning to the NFC West in 2002. As part of the NFL's divisional restructuring. The move coincides with the franchise's rise under head coach Mike Holmgren, who leads Seattle to its first Super Bowl appearance in 2005. But the defining era comes later, built around a top-ranked defense nicknamed the Legion of Boom. Between 2012 and 2015, Seattle allows a league-low 15.2 points per game, with cornerback Richard Sherman and safety Earl Thomas anchoring the secondary. In 2013, that unit powers a 43-8 rout of Denver in Super Bowl XXVIII. Running back, Marshawn Lynch adds physicality, most notably during the 2010 playoffs, with a 67-yard touchdown known as the Beastquake. However, the following year's Super Bowl ends in controversy when trailing by 4 with 26 seconds left. Seattle throws from the 1-yard line and gets intercepted, costing them back-to-back titles. Head coach Pete Carroll, who wins 119 games across 14 seasons, oversees a decade of playoff consistency but is dismissed in 2024 as the team moves toward a full rebuild. The Seahawks now seek to reestablish their identity post-Carroll while playing in the NFL's westernmost outpost, Titans. The franchise begins as the Houston Oilers in 1960, one of the 8 original AFL teams, and wins back-to-back league titles in its first 2 seasons. After the AFL-NFL merger, Houston struggles to sustain postseason success, leading to a relocation and rebranding as the Tennessee Titans in 1999. That same year, they make their first and only Super Bowl appearance, losing 23-16 to the Rams when wide receiver Kevin Dyson is tackled 1 yard short of the end zone on the game's final play. The team reaches that stage thanks to the Music City Miracle, a controversial last-second lateral return against Buffalo in the wildcard round. Running back Derrick Henry becomes the face of the modern Titans, rushing for 2,027 yards in 22-20 to join an elite group of 2,000-yard backs. Despite his dominance and a pair of playoff appearances under coach Mike Vrabel, Tennessee fails to build sustained postseason momentum. The franchise still searches for its second deep playoff run since relocating weighed down by inconsistent quarterback play and a lack of offensive balance. The Titans remain defined by near misses and isolated highlights as they attempt to construct a stable contender in the AFC South. Bengals. The Bengals joined the AFL in 1968 under Hall of Fame coach Paul Brown and merge into the NFL 2 years later. Their most iconic early moment comes in the 1981 AFC Championship game known as the Freezer Bowl, where Cincinnati defeats San Diego 27-7 in a 59-octageous wind chill at Riverfront Stadium. That team reaches Super Bowl 15th, but loses to the 49ers, a pattern that repeats in 1988 and again in 2021, each time falling short against San Francisco by one-score margins. Despite 3 appearances, Cincinnati remains without a championship. In 2021, second-year quarterback Joe Burrow throws for 601 yards and 34 touchdowns to lead the Bengals from a 4-win season to the Super Bowl. That playoff run revives the city's football identity and brings national attention to the Who Dey chant that originated in the 1980s. Yet even with back-to-back postseason appearances under Burrow, offensive line issues and tight margins continue to define Cincinnati's playoff exits. The Bengals now carry one of the league's longest active championship droughts as they attempt to convert near misses into a lasting legacy. Browns. The Browns formed in 1946 as part of the AAFC and immediately established dominance, winning all 4 league championships before joining the NFL in 1950. They add NFL titles in 1950, 1954, 1955, and 1964 behind a roster that includes quarterback Otto Graham and running back Jim Brown, both Hall of Famers. However, as the Super Bowl era begins, Cleveland's success evaporates. By the 1990s, after a string of playoff heartbreaks, the franchise suffers a deeper blow owner. Art Modell relocates the team to Baltimore in 1996, leaving Cleveland without a team for 3 years. The Browns return in 1999 as an expansion franchise, but struggle to regain relevance. Over 2 decades, they cycle through over 30 starting quarterbacks and multiple regimes, securing just 1 playoff win since 1994, a 48-37 wildcard victory over Pittsburgh in 2021. In 2022, ownership trades 3 first-round picks for quarterback Deshaun Watson and guarantees him $230 million despite an ongoing suspension. That move underscores the franchise's willingness to gamble for long-term stability, though success remains elusive. The Browns' modern era is marked by volatility, but their fan base, one of the most loyal in American sports, continues to fill First Energy Stadium year after year. Lions. The Lions trace their origins to 1930 as the Portsmouth Spartans, relocating to Detroit in 1934, and winning 4 NFL championships by 1957. That 1957 title marks the last time they reached the league's East League summit, as Detroit enters a prolonged decline, missing the postseason in 38 of the next 45 seasons. The franchise becomes synonymous with underachievement, especially after finishing the 2008 season at 0-16, the first team in NFL history to post that record under the modern 16-game format. Hall of Fame running back Barry Sanders remains a lone statistical highlight in the void. Despite retiring abruptly in 1999, he racks up 15,269 rushing yards over 10 seasons, averaging 99.8 yards per game. In 2023, under head coach Dan Campbell, Detroit finally snaps a 32-year drought with a playoff win, then adds a second the following week to reach their first NFC championship game since 1991. The franchise is also recognized for hosting a nationally televised Thanksgiving game every year since 1934, a tradition that persists even through decades of losing. The win-starved fan base, hardened by history, now watches with renewed expectation as the Lions aim for their first Super Bowl appearance. Cardinals. The Cardinals originate in 1898 as the Morgan Athletic Club, later joining the NFL in its founding year of 1920 as the Chicago Cardinals, making them the league's oldest continuously operating franchise. Over the next century, the team relocates twice, first to St. Louis in 1960, then to Phoenix in 1988, before officially adopting the Arizona Cardinals name in 1994. Despite the longevity, they enter the modern era with the NFL's lowest all-time win percentage, a result of extended playoff droughts and minimal postseason success. In 2008, the franchise reaches its only Super Bowl after a 9-7 regular season led by quarterback Kurt Warner and wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, who records 546 postseason receiving yards that year. They fall to Pittsburgh in Super Bowl X3 on a last-minute touchdown 27-23, despite holding a late fourth-quarter lead. Fitzgerald plays 17 seasons in Arizona, scoring 121 touchdowns and finishing second all-time in career receiving yards when he retires. His consistency defines the team's few competitive stretches amid decades of instability. The franchise's struggles persist into the 2020s, setting the stage for another rebuild around a new quarterback and coaching regime. Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars enter the NFL as an expansion team in 1995 and reach the AFC Championship game just 1 year later after going 9-7 and upsetting both Buffalo and Denver in the playoffs. That early surge sets high expectations, but the franchise struggles to sustain success across the following decades. By 2017, they returned to prominence with the league's second-ranked defense, allowing just 16.8 points per game and forcing 33 takeaways. Jacksonville reaches the AFC title game again, but surrenders a 10-point fourth-quarter lead to New England. The following year, the roster regresses to a 5-11 finish, triggering another rebuild. In 2021, they draft Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence first overall, but pair him with Urban Meyer, who is fired before completing his first season after a 2-11 start and off-field controversies. Lawrence developed steadily under Doug Peterson, leading a 27-0 comeback win over the Chargers in the 2022 playoffs, but the team still lacks a Super Bowl appearance. Despite flashes of promise, sustained contention remains elusive. The search for consistency continues into Lawrence's prime as Jacksonville tries to secure its first conference title. Texans. The Houston Texans enter the league in 2002 as the NFL's 32nd franchise and remain the youngest team in the league. After several years of building, they draft Wisconsin defensive end J.J. Watt in 2011, who becomes the franchise cornerstone by recording 101 career sacks and earning 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Houston wins 4 division titles between 2011 and 2016, but never advances past the divisional round. A revolving door at head coach and quarterback prevents long-term momentum. The early 2020s bring organizational crisis as legal scandals, and trade demands lead to the 2022 exit of quarterback Deshaun Watson, who once led the league with 4,123 passing yards. In response, Houston selects C.J. Stroud, second overall in 2023, and he throws 23 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions en route to Offensive Rookie of the Year honors and a playoff win. Stroud becomes the first rookie QB in NFL history to lead the league in touchdown-to-interception ratio. Despite that success, Houston remains one of only 4 franchises never to reach a conference championship game, positioning 2024 as a potential turning point.